started being implemented in Africa in public health. Along this journey, we also understood that ultimately technology is just an enabler. To have a sustainable impact at scale, we need to tap into the collective energy of the ecosystem, what we call Samaj Sarkar Bazaar. And we need to enact enabling policies, understand local needs, and build local capacity to solve problems. We've strived to do this through partnerships with system integrators, grassroots organizations, and local entrepreneurs to use Digit to solve hard to crack problems across domains like sanitation, health, legal, rural, etc. We're very excited to see such a huge show of interest from all of you. In the past, we've had individual community interactions with different groups like the IITM Alumni Association, but this is the first time that we are opening it up to a community of people, all of whom seem to come with a wealth of knowledge and an eagerness to contributing to solving for billions. With this, I will hand it over to Viraj to get us started with our first session.
Thank you, Soumya. Can I be seen or should I stand here or? I'm visible. Okay, all right. Okay, good morning. Yeah, okay. We are debating whether we should have this in the evening with some beers or in the morning with coffee. So I think next time we'll try evening with beers and see how it goes. But fantastic to have you here. My name is Viraj Tyagi. I'm the CEO, the chief troublemaker here. I think, let me just start by my personal experience. I've worked for more than 30 years now, done banking, done entrepreneurship. I've been doing this for the last 7 years. And I have to say, this is by far the job where every day I get up and see increasingly incompetent. You know, it's like, because the problems are so dense and so varied and so complex. You know, every time you think you've made a breakthrough, you kind of, again, something comes and say, have you really thought of that? Did we really think it'll play out like this? And I'll give you some examples as we go along. So we're constantly in the mode of, we always say, use a term in eGov saying, to keep the goal constant, you have to constantly change, right? So I think the change is huge here. I think I came from corporate, and a lot of you are working in corporate right now. It's a very different world, and I'll talk a bit about that also. Okay, so let's first get started. You'll do the slides. Oh, slides will not be visible for me. I have to stand here. There's a glitch. And thank you all for coming in. I know it's a Saturday morning, so it's great to see you all here. Okay, we have a usual glitch, so I think we'll just wait for that. So how many are you from a tech kind of a background? Product? Okay. Policy, program? Joseph, why are you raising a hand? Joseph is trying to, he's our chief product officer. He's trying to increase the numbers of product people. Are we there? Nitesh Parmar is hand up. No? Okay, let's get started till we. Let's get started. Is it working now? Okay, there you go. Can we start with this? I'll have you to start. Can you all scan this and there's a question and answer this question? I'll just stay out of the way. People on Zoom also, if you can start typing your response. We just need a single word response to the question. And it's something along the lines of last time you went for a government service or a government department, what was your experience like? So we'll do a word cloud of that. Is the word cloud going to come here? Word cloud will come here. Okay. Just 60 seconds and just put whatever comes to your mind. Sorry, I should stand here. Please come in, folks. It's a workload. Slow. Absent. That's a nice one. Okay, just put it up. Okay, absent, time consuming, slow are definitely the tiresome, time consuming. Surprisingly quick. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Why is time consuming so big? Yes, okay. Okay, I think, can people see the word cloud? They can't. Okay, doesn't matter. Chill, just show me the word cloud. They'll trust me. Okay, time consuming, corrupted, tiresome, difficult, seamless, pathetic, outdated, slow, delayed, confusing, corrupted. Yeah, I mean, those are the usual terms that come to our minds, when we think about dealing with the government. Maybe changing things. No, just leave it to me. I'll do it. Okay. So I think essentially, if we ask why does eGov exist, the answer is to take care of. Just go back to the slide. Let's go to the next slide. It's not changing. Okay, so we exist to make sure all these kind of answers don't exist 10 years later. Okay, essentially to say that you can get easy to access, efficient, transparent services wherever you are. Okay, so idea is, I don't know how many of you were around when banking in 90s. Have anybody been to the bank in 90s or 2000s? We used to go to the bank, we used to fill up the forms, stand in the queue, get the coin, go to the cashier. It's take 45 minutes to go get anything done. Or railways. It's a great example of rail. We used to go to the station, we used to have that cardboard ticket, which we might be available. You don't know whether it's the right ticket or not, whether availability is there or not. So I think the essential idea is to create digital interventions, not just digitizing, so that everybody can get services without bias, which is transparent. So now in railways, right, how many tickets are available. Okay. Now you don't have to go to a bank anymore. You can actually do everything online. Okay. But if you choose to, you can go to the bank also. Okay. So those are the three terms: equitable, transparent, and easy and efficient services, public services to everybody. Okay. Anybody has an idea how many public services are available for citizens in Karnataka? Just take a wild guess. Yeah, it's actually 1,200. From issuing a caste certificate to getting a water connection to paying your bills, all those are public services. Government is essentially in the business of doing services for the citizen. That's the basic business, right? Okay, now it's working. Super. So I'll do this. Why do we exist? I've answered that question. Okay. Then what are the real problems? Why is this a difficult problem to solve? I'll talk a bit about it because that's important. And then again, I'll not say how we are solving those problems. I'm just saying how we might solve those problems. We have a certain thesis. We'd love to kind of walk you through those. This is done. You remember COVID? It was a hard time. There's no reason next time something like this happens, people shouldn't have to walk 600 kilometers. We should be able to service them better, right? No matter which strata of society they are from. And this is what I said about why we exist. Okay. So before I go into the things, I'll just take a human side of the things and tell a story of 3 people involved in service delivery. Okay. There's a citizen, there's an employee who's sitting on the on the desk who wants to service you. And also don't remember, like in corporate, you have people who are administrators or leaders or managers, right? Okay. All three of them. Sometimes you wonder, right? You're going in the street and why can't they fix this, this road, right? Because it is actually genuinely hard in government, right? Because the procurement process, procedures, quality of your, vendors and all those kind of things, it is hard. So don't assume that government doesn't want to do a good job. There are constraints everywhere. That's what I'll talk about a bit later. So this is a story of Adi Lakshmi. I've changed the name, community volunteer. On a hot day in Chirala, we're talking to her in Andhra Pradesh, a small town of 40,000 people. And she is standing next to this drain that you see on the right side, which looks clean now. And essentially this drain was overflowing with sewage about 2 days ago. She used what is called the Puru Seva app, which is built by us in Andhra Pradesh. Straight away, because this was a dengue, last year there was a dengue in this area, it was marked on the system. She straight away got a call from commissioner, said this will be fixed quickly. And within 24 hours, it got fixed. And commissioner called him 3 times during that time to make sure it is fixed. So that's the power of just ease of access. She could do it sitting where she was. It was transparent. When whoever this was assigned to, they knew what they were supposed to do. Okay. Now, this is my good friend Subhash in Zirakpur in Punjab. The files you see behind, imagine this a hard disk of a computer. Okay, these are all the records of properties in Zirakpur. Okay, so you walk in, you got a house in Zirakpur, you want to say, okay, how much property tax did I pay last year? He has to come back here, get on a ladder and search for files. And before our system went in, I was talking to him and he said, and he was giving an example, my life is so difficult, I have to do all these kind of things. My cousin, he's in Chandigarh and he's not even a graduate and he's got an app because he drives a taxi. So in a way, look at the, what we use the dignity of labor or tools to do your jobs. Now we have so many tools to do our jobs, emails, Slack and all those kind of, that's what makes us, we think it makes us efficient, but it does make us as efficient, right? But issue is, large part of governments are still working in what is a 19th century system of files. Okay. So don't underestimate the change that is needed on the supply side. There's a demand side of it. You can make all the services available to the citizens. But if there's no serviceability on the other side, right, then it is very hard for government to deliver those services. Okay. Now, in my experience, the next layer is what we call IAS officers, the bureaucrats and all those people. Their biggest problem is they make policies. Okay. They'll decide, okay, what kind of street lighting will be done in a certain area, what kind of budget is needed for a certain ward to do certain things. Their main problem is half the time they don't have data to make decisions. Okay, they really don't know. I mean, it is funny how many of them are still using Excel sheets to look at how many street lights do I have in Kanpur. It's not data easily available. Okay, so this is Mr. Sai Srinath. Again, a small town, and I'm taking the example of small towns because these are the places where typically capacity is weaker. This iPad that he's using, it has all the details in his town. Where are the complaints coming from? How much collection of the revenue has been done? Which revenue officer is where? So basically, he can keep an eye on the citizen needs and ensure that his officers are responding to it. Okay. So having this is a huge thing. I mean, we take it for granted in the corporate world, right? We get all the data about what is the project status, how much sales target we've achieved. But those are huge things. So essentially what I'm trying to say is you cannot solve problem for one angle. You can't just give the tools to the citizens. You need to improve the capacity of the whole system. And that's what our kind of theory of change is. And why is it hard? I think, again, I compare it to the corporate sector. Corporate sector is all about segmentation. You say, my customers are 18-year-old who love coffee. And then you solve for them. Okay. My customers are housewives who are in a hurry. They need food quickly. Or young professionals who don't have time to cook. They can get Swiggy and stuff like that. So solving as a product manager, as a technologist, as a marketer is easier. Here, the context of it, I mean, Chirala is as different from Bombay as Sweden is from India. Andhra Pradesh, if you look at the socioeconomic indicators of Kerala versus UP or a Bihar, it is like North Europe and so, and within that, the diversity of languages, we have 14 languages, right? So every problem has a different, because of the socioeconomic norms, because of culture, becomes very, very diverse, hard to solve, okay? Then the multiple stakes. This is one of the biggest learning I've had, that by solving for one actor in the system doesn't mean you'll solve the problem, right? So classic thing, you'll solve for a customer, everything else follows, right? You solve for the end customer, your internal process will follow that, right? You say, I need to give this, deliver this food packet in 30 minutes. Then your supply chain, your, product, everything will follow that. Here it is very different, right? Because sometimes stakeholders have orthogonal needs, okay? Let's say I want to open up all the data for a city. Some people may not like it, okay? Or I want to have all the data available to the employees. That might have issues on privacy for the citizens, right? Or I want to give citizens all the options of launching complaints, but that might lead to problems in terms of which department is get to assigned to, okay? So the solving in a point solutions don't work here. You can't solve it once and say it's done. Even in the same city, the nature of problem changes, okay? And scale, I mean, if you look at a market size of a typical, e-commerce, it's all tier 1 towns, all those kind of things. Here, talking about 1.4 billion people, right? You cannot leave anybody behind. In fact, there is an argument that traditional ways of looking at technology actually exclude some of the people who need it most. It doesn't mean everybody has to use mobile phone. The photo you saw it on the page of the purpose of eGov, that old lady sitting, right? This is also digital because somebody has come and giving assisted service for her because she cannot do it herself. So we have to make sure nobody is left behind. You just can't do funky technology, right? You can't just do funky technology and say it'll work. You got to see the person who needs it most, who's the most excluded. Are they getting it or not? Okay. Then sustainability. And that's linked to capacity of the government. Again, since a lot of you come from the private sector background, your CTO knows how to manage an application. Let's say you buy Oracle, SAP, or whatever you buy as an internal ERP, right? You got resources, you got skill sets to do it. It is very hard in the government to have the skill sets to maintain some of these things or sustain them, okay? A lot of time you go in a particular state where we have worked like 5 years ago, and we ask what happened. Oh, that IS officer got transferred after that project did not go anywhere. Can you guess what is the failure rate of digital transformation projects in government world over? Just take a wild guess. 70%? It's 87%, okay? 87%. So some of the things we take for granted, that you can write a good RFP, or you understand your needs, or you can run a program to success, are not that easy, okay? And that's because of you are solving, please remember, and you see this in various, when we are in our building communities, right? There are heated debates on various things, because you cannot leave anybody out, So I think, and that means that you have to make it easy and cost effective for it to sustain, okay? Today, if you don't have, you don't solve keeping the capacity of the government in mind, you create some funky architecture and funky technology. But problem is, then the biggest hazard in our sector, which is a kind of what we call the third sector or the NGOs, is sustainability, right? If you start something, then you become the bottleneck, right? So you need to have what we call an exit strategy, or a strategy to how you sustain it. And there's no answer to that, but that's something you need to make some very, very complex. And this is what, 6 years ago, as we started thinking about this, what we call reimagining our approach, and Manish and Subhashini will talk a bit more about from a tech point of view. one of the biggest things is you kind of try to scale what works. You go to one village or one town and do something, okay? And you try and say, okay, this pilot is successful, you scale it. But if you don't think of scale from day one, okay, whether it's your go-to-market strategy, whether it's your partnership strategy, whether it's your product, whether it's tech, then at scale you cannot work. I mean, beautiful example is what Nandan gives the example of Aadhaar. On day one in Aadhaar, they said it can only scale if we keep it minimal. Okay. So when Nandan went there, they had 40 fields in Aadhaar. What is your income? What do you eat? How much electricity you do? It's a good information to have. They finally went with 5. Okay. So I think because that can scale. Okay. And the operating model is the first time government did so much outsourcing of operations, right? So everything, your operating model, your technology, your products has to look at scale from day one. Okay. Second thing is there's a lot of joy in solving. You guys are here because of solving, right? There's a lot of joy in solving. When you solve a problem, it is a beautiful moment, right? But again, if you go to the previous page, diversity and context, they're sitting here. I don't know what's happening in Asansol or Jodhpur or wherever, right? So one of the constructs we use is, can you look at a model which distributes the ability to solve? Okay. And I think App World is a great example of that. I don't know how many of you remember, which was the first mobile operating system, even before Android, Symbian. Why did Symbian die? But they wanted to solve everything themselves. They never opened their tools. They never tooled it, right? They never distributed the ability to solve. Why did Android prosper? And because from day one, their philosophy was, we'll only build certain reference applications, and then we'll put tools out there and enablement out there for people to build on. So that's the other thing. This is also important, captive versus open. Again, our usual instinct is to capture, right? If I've done one state, let me do 5 states. Okay. If you're 100 people, let's become 500 people, right? That's what we are taught in business schools and businesses that we run, right? I think this was one of the biggest, hardest one for us to kind of move, which is being open, and open not just in terms of technology. I think we are an open source organization. All our knowledge, all our tools, everything is open, right? Because unless you open, you not create this. Okay. Unless you open, people will not trust you. Your trust is a huge issue, right? Trust is a huge issue when 3 different sectors work with each other: the social sector, the Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, the government, the markets, and the social sector, right? And then what is the value you're creating? One is to measure eGov's value. We have done this, that, and other is to value what is the societal value you're creating. How many people are building? How many people are benefiting? How many solutions other people are building, right? So those are kind of philosophy behind of the work we do, whether it's technology, whether it's program, whether it's our policy work, or the work we do with the markets. Any questions so far? I'm going very fast. I know that. There's a lot.
No, I'm checking the.
I have 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, 5 minutes, and then we'll have.
Okay, all right. So this is a slightly dense slide. If you can just focus slightly harder for next 3 minutes. So there are 3 parts to what we do. Okay, obviously. Wait. That's a good question. We should take that question. Okay. So this is the Digit platform, which has core data infrastructure, core government services, governance services, and solutions and products. Okay. This is the base. Okay. So it's got open APIs, protocols to ensure interoperability and reusability. Then this is what we call resource stack, which is basically all the things that eGov provides, which is advisory, open knowledge assets. There's something called Digit Academy, right? So this is where we are saying we're enabling and building capacity to solve. Okay. That not only we can build on Digit, but other people can build on Digit. Okay. So this is very important. So I think we almost spend like 30% of our efforts on this. Okay. So in that sense, we're truly kind of multi-dimensional organization. Then the ecosystem starts seeing value, right? All these private sector actors, the governments and everything. Once they have understood how it works, the value of it, and they feel they're enabled and they're supported, right? Then the Oh. And then really then the multiple programs work on digit. So basically government and the ecosystem partners leverage digit to run the national and subnational transmission program. These are examples. This is Chandigarh, Kerala, Andhra, they call it Punjab, Odisha. Then this is for rural, M-Gram Seva is for rural, National Authority for CoWIN. Assam is actually being done by a non-profit called Pirabal Foundation. It's a statewide helpline for health services. Then Jharkhand, Bihar. So this is just example. We have like 50 plus programs running as a common. So we are only enabling and supporting. We are not running these programs. Okay, and that's how you get scale, right? Because markets and what a platform does is it creates a base rules of participation, right? If there's privacy by default, nobody can change it. If all the information a person is encrypted, nobody can change it. There's certain design patterns people have to follow it. Okay, but it creates incentive for people to work together because you've taken a lot of unknowns out, right? I'm going to write an RFP. Who's going to build it? Okay, so 80% is already built. It's like a low code kind of a thing. 80% is already built. You have to add a UI to it. You can do that. Okay, but I think all three are important, right? And sometimes on this program layer, just to give you a sense, sometimes we do programs ourselves when there's nobody else running programs. Okay, so for example, we did run a program on sanitation in Odisha because we felt exemplification is very important because somebody has to take the first risk. So it almost exemplifying the power of platform to solve social problems by running programs yourself. But mostly programs are done by actors. Okay. Yeah. And these are the people who benefit on the top line. Yeah. 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 Yeah, we can skip that. And just to give you an example, these are it's not just a platform. There's also products on this. So you got products for employees, for citizens, for administrators and stuff like that. There's an example of last week. A bunch of us were there for a 3-day workshop in Delhi. So this is a very big part of our work. Go on. Yeah. Yeah, keep going. Some example of how much resources are available for people to use. Just stay here. So those are the 3 things just to kind of building digital public infra and products, building the capacity of the government to leverage this, which includes policy making, stuff like that. Then catalyzing markets to participate. Those are 3 things. If you were to ask me, what is your operating model? That's the operating model. It's not just technology. Okay. And that's some high level impact number, 1.1 billion public services delivered, $1.9 billion of revenue mobilized, 2.3 billion vaccination certificates, almost 30 crore now citizens are benefiting. And network effects, which is 200 plus partners, 8 sectors. We have built some 17, 18 solutions, partners have been 50 plus. Okay. So there's some examples again, we can skip this. Yeah, this is just an example of what if just for state of Andhra Pradesh over 5 years, what they've been able to achieve. So this is revenue from 5.5 billion to 14.7 billion. And this is just basically efficiency, transparency, and visibility, right? Nothing has changed. Okay. You can so give you example for raising, they have what 30 lakh properties approximately in Andhra Pradesh, 37 lakhs. To raise the bills, it took them 6 months. Now on one day, on first day of the financial year, the bills are raised. And it's a integrated bill of your water tax on that property, your sewage tax, your open land tax. It's like a Airtel bill. It goes on day 1. Okay. Okay, next. Yeah, that's the number of services. So these are service requests closed. This is number of days from 111 days to 21 days. Okay. And again, just the function of you got better tools to do it, you got visibility, you got transparency and all those kind of things. And finally, this is what next 10 years for us look like. We believe not only in India, we can actually help, LMICs, lower middle income countries to achieve the SDGs. So what we call 30 in 30. We want to be in 30 countries, helping 30 countries by 2030, help deliver better services and achieve SDGs. That's it. Last slide. Okay. Questions?
So we'll do one thing. We'll first take some of the questions which are on the chat.
Yeah.
Right. So the first one was why all government sites do not provide accessibility. There was another related one. This is great. What is the roadmap to make these applications multilingual and support natural language processing in Indian languages?
So all our work is multilingual by default. So right now, 14 languages in Ministry of Defense in 14 languages, right? 14 languages, yeah. So yeah, so I think by default it is, you can't have inclusion without multilingual, yeah.
Okay, the next one, which other organizations do you feel are in a similar space to you and have a similar vision? How do you collaborate with them?
So it's a good question. Actually, I always keep joking with people. If you were if organizing eGov was in the private sector, and we were in Koramangala, this ecosystem, and we said Nandan Nilekani, Bill Gates, Ratan Tata, and Priyomi, there are funders, and 1.1 billion services got delivered, will be a unicorn. But it's a very rich ecosystem. I think, because as you know, Nandan and Shrikant Nadamuni are our founders. Okay. There is iSpirit, you would have heard, India Stack, right? There is eGov, which is working on education. Okay. There is MOSIP, which is working on ID, like a Aadhaar-like ID. There is Co-Develop, which is another global fund. So all these are part of the same ecosystem, right? So eGov is like less than a kilometer from here. On Friday or Thursday we were there. There was a delegation from Kenya who had come to look at, what we're doing. So it's a very rich ecosystem, and there's a lot of volunteers here who worked on iSpirit or worked with Aadhaar, who kind of come in. So we really benefit from people like Nandan, Pramod Verma, who was the chief architect of Aadhaar and UPI. We spend like almost every 2 months, we meet them, do reviews with them. So it's a pretty rich ecosystem in that sense.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a few other questions. How are we solving this is the last one we'll take from here, then we'll open up to the room. How are we solving conflicts and interdependencies of multiple stakes, public versus private, city versus town, municipal corporation versus panchayat programs, etc.? Who regulates different initiatives with respect to data privacy, ethos, societal, cultural conflicts, etc.?
So it's a hard question. There's no simple answer to it. There are 2 or 3 things we try to do. One is we are very driven by a few principles. So things like privacy and data, there are defaults in the platform, which basically are in line with not just in line with the current kind of law, but also some of the things we believe should be true, right? So that it cannot be misused. So a lot of things are coded in the platform. So it's basically, it's very hard to kind of, but some of the real-time conflicts in terms of multiple stakeholders, the baseline we use is the most important stakeholder to solve for is a citizen. Okay. So let's say a city manager says, actually it doesn't matter, if we don't have, phone call as a channel of service. Okay. Everybody has mobile phones, they can use mobile phones. I think our view will be, no, we need to offer all the channels. Okay. So what we solve for first is the citizen value. Okay. What was the other question? There was one more question I didn't that, right? On the cultural norm, right? So again, I think just to kind of, it's a very good question. When we say contexts are important, okay, which is what culture is a part of context. We are very, very respectful of people who work in context. So we are clear. If Piramal says in Bihar, this is going to work because they've got 500 people working in Bihar, we'll go. So we basically work with trusted partners. that way, right? We'll not have a view on, like Mozambique. We are working with 3 partners in Mozambique to see what is the best way to address the market needs in Mozambique, right? We didn't know it only has 40% mobile phone penetration. So in our platform, you had mobile number as your ID. Now that goes for a toss, okay? But the point is, we don't have a view on the cultural part because we don't do a lot of programs ourselves. We work with programmatic partners and trust their judgment to solve some of those issues. Okay, any questions here?
I guess basic question, what kind of volunteering are you looking for?
I think we'll cover it, but 3-4 areas. I think by definition, what is happening, I think in a way, as a product and as a mission. As a product and as a mission. As a product, as a mission, I think we are in the phase of network effects. I mean, a lot of people are coming to us. We have huge, like Selco Foundation came last week, and they're doing 25,000 public, so PHCs, public health centers, with completely solar energy. And they want to manage the performance and everything. They want to see how they can use Digit. Okay. Hak Darshak came to us because now it's clear that at scale, delivering public service, this is a good platform. Why rebuild it if you're to do something, right? So one is looking at from a product point of view, how do we help other people build products on top of it? Okay, that's definitely one. There are still hard tech problems we have to solve, right? How do you make a single instance for a particular, like Jal Jeevan mission? There are 6 lakh villages, 20 crore households who do get tap water through this. So we're talking to them about creating a simple app using our platform for the Gram Panchayat, who's going to run that community, which is for them to manage their expenses and collect their revenue. Okay, how do you design some of those things? So they're complex tech problems. Then there are policy issues around what is the best way to, like privacy is a great one. How do you balance privacy versus service delivery, right? How do you balance that? Then there are areas of on programmatically, how do you design? I think one of the things we are learning is even consulting other people. There's certain pedagogy we need to develop. Almost need to become like an academy to teach. So people who got teaching experience, can you help us design better curriculum? We're launching Digital Academy next, because unless, and we need to have partnerships with academic institutions. That's the only way to sustain, right? So there are problems. We're not short on problems. Yeah.
The work looks great. One piece that I think I saw missing or probably was covered but not explicitly is accountability. While we are building the positive workflow, giving them platforms to solve their problems, of course, all the deliverables will have some hiccups. But what is our channel to solve solve those hiccups? Let's say, random example, the coding platform has a lot of our data, and then there is a rumor that it gets hacked. Who's accountable? Should I go to Twitter and then tag eGov and complain about it? Like, what are my resources to actually troubleshoot the system failure?
I don't have an answer to that. Okay, I think it's something we're thinking deeply about. And I think accountability in governance, who decides and who decides, right? So we're doing the roadmap of Digit now. If we are a truly societal organization, what is the representation of various parts of the society in the ecosystem on our decision that we are making? Okay. So I think I'm saying some of those are kind of higher level problems. We've still not got our head around it, but those are important problems to start thinking about it now. Yeah.
This question, maybe you're going to cover this later today. Have you thought about an engagement and an enablement model for all of us volunteers here, or we just pick up a problem and then, okay.
So we will have a session by our CTO and architect Subhashini on the tech. Then Jojo will do a session on product. And then Soumya will kind of wrap it up in terms of, they will also throw some projects at you today so that you have some flavor of what are the projects, what are the solutions we're looking for. And then she'll talk about what the engagement model is on that. Yeah.
I have two questions actually. There was one bar graph that you were showing that the revenue collected has been more after the this platform has been introduced. So I was just wondering what platform is this? Are they leveraging the data that you have, which is the government's central data, and people are building platforms on that? Is it just the data?
It's not the data, it's basically the whole, and we'll show you some examples later on. Essentially, if you look at revenue collection, there are three parts: assessment, billing and collection, right? So every part of it, if you increase by 10 percentage point, it multiplies and increases it, right? So I talked to you about assessment, that on one day you can assess all 30 lakh properties in Andhra Pradesh, right? So that increases the efficiency of the process. Then billing, because you can combine all the bills, you can bill it. Then main thing is collection, right? So a lot of the leakage in government happens when there's discretion on, you walk up to the counter and say, how much is my property tax? Okay. He says, it's actually 5,000 rupees, but you pay 2,000. Okay. And give me 500 rupees. Okay. So a lot of leakage happens there. So it's all, in an algorithm, it gets calculated. Nobody can touch it. Okay. So there is a stoppage of leakage and increase in efficiency and accountability. You can see which ward is behind, which revenue officer is behind, and say, why are you not collecting money? That's the thing. Just one more thing on tax. Tax is very important from a point of view of equitability, right? Because essentially tax is a way of distributing wealth in the communities. Okay, one more question we can take. One more.
I just wanted to check how volunteers have contributed in the past, and like where I'm getting to with this is, like, are they adding additional bandwidth which you currently don't have, or are they like bringing additional skill sets that you don't have currently?
I think the best example of volunteer is a 6'4" guy called Madhavan, who came. He's not here. I'll show his photo, but he's the kind of the father or the grandfather of the architecture we use today. He came from US with 4 of his buddies in December 2016 when I just joined. We did a hackathon for 2 weeks, and the basic kind of architecture of Digit was actually done then. So in that sense, that was a capability we did not have. Okay, so I think team can contribute, but I personally feel we're looking for different capabilities. Like you asked that question about governance, right? If somebody is inclined towards that, right? Because we need more diversity of opinions, of skill sets, experiences, right? Like a SaaS, we're talking about SaaSifying our product for a long time. But I know it's possible with architecture, but somebody who's actually done it and has the capability, they can just cut through and do it fairly quickly. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to have you here. And you'll hear some more from rest of the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Viraj. Again, folks on the calls, please keep sending us your questions. We'll try to answer them after the session. We have limited time. And people who are here, you'll have time to interact with everyone after this. Now I'll invite Subhashini to talk to us a little bit more about the tech aspects of the platform. And again, she'll also introduce a few projects that we have for volunteers. And we'll follow the same thing. We'll let her speak for maybe 20 minutes, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. And we'll try to keep time better this time.
Thanks, Soumya. Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to have you all here. Very warm welcome to you all. Nice to see so many faces, bright and cheerful on a Saturday morning. So Manish is our CTO. I'm filling in for him because he couldn't be here today. My name is Subhashini, and I'm an architect with eGov, and I work on the Digit platform. Digit is the open source platform for service delivery and governance that we build out here. I just want to get a few terms out of the way before I start presenting. Just one sec. So you'll hear me use terms like DPGs and DPIs. For those of you who are not in this space, I think it's important we get these terms out of the way so you can follow along. DPG is nothing but a digital public good. Just like we used to build these roads and bridges and flyovers and all these assets in the physical world, the digital equivalent of that basically becomes a digital public good. And Digit as a platform has been certified by the DPG Alliance, which is based out of Europe, I think all the Nordic countries. And we've been certified as a digital public good. It's an open source platform built with all open source technology. So broadly for this presentation, I just want to give you a little bit of context of why we do what we do. I think Viraj set the stage for it. So I just want to go a little bit into how we are thinking about tech. What is the context here? What are we building? And then I'll go a little bit into the platform itself. And at a very high level, I'll just talk about what are the various layers of the platform that we are building and how we think it solves problems at scale. And then I'll just introduce some of my colleagues who will talk about some of the exciting projects that they are working on. And maybe if that sparks your interest, that could be a jump off point for some of you who want to contribute. So just to set the context of why we do what we do. And I know a lot of you here may not be from a GovTech background or maybe not even a development sector background. So this is a very simplified model, mental model of how a government works, right? So what does a government do? It formulates policy, procedure, it runs programs. And to do all this, it needs to mobilize revenue. And revenue can be in the form of taxes, debts, fines, grants, and things like that. And this money that is flowing into the government gets fanned out across multiple departments: finance, health, water, sanitation, etc. All these departments go off to work with taxpayer money, and ultimately they deliver one of three things broadly to the citizens. Can you just close that out? So basically, you have either infrastructure that gets built as output, or you deliver certain citizen services, or you do some kind of benefit transfer to citizens. So broadly, these are the three outputs that you expect from any government. And ultimately, this should all lead to better quality of life for citizens. And ultimately, that's what we are aiming for here. So, and how are governments organized to do this, right? So we've got national governments, which get subdivided into state and then local. Now, if you see the tree, the national government looks relatively small, but then you have multiple states with various departments. And at the lowest level, where you have all the urban local bodies and things like that, you have a huge number of them, right? And ultimately, it's these guys who end up, doing a lot of these projects that are driven at the national and the state level. And this slide looks really busy, very intentionally. And if you think about how a government works, right, this is how it looks, right? There are so many points of communication between the national, the state governments, the local governments, and money and budgets get set at a national level. They flow down to states, from there to the local levels. And we need all of these three pieces to work together to really be able to deliver services to citizens and generally provide a better quality of life, right? But unfortunately, the systems that we build also end up mimicking the structure of governments. So a government has so many departments, so many processes, so many actors involved in the system. And we end up building systems also that kind of mimic this kind of spaghetti, right? So you have got departments that build multiple applications. There are many applications within the same department, and you've got this across departments. But ultimately, for all of us to move together in a certain direction in a unified manner, all these departments need to work together. They need to have data, unified data that they all can look at and agree about, so that they can formulate policy that makes sense, that's based on data. And we have to learn from our mistakes. But today what we see is this, right? We've got people who say, I have 27 systems to log in to do my work. What do I do? And if between departments, if they keep asking me to copy data or give data, then when do I actually get to my real work, right? These are all real problems, and we face it even in our work lives, right? So there is lack of transparency, there is lack of accountability because there is no transparency. And we have questions like, why did we not budget for this? Where did this money go? Why is this data not matching? And people end up fighting just about basic things when we should actually be solving higher things. And ultimately, what does this all lead to, right? It leads to lack of trust, leads to delays in payments, lack of coordinated service delivery to citizens, and ultimately we as citizens get impacted because of all this. So what are we doing and how are we solving for this, right? How does Digit solve for this? So this is what we briefly talked about. Data gets siloed in applications. which means cost of integration and coordination is high between departments. This means that administrators don't get visibility into what is going on, which leads to poor decisions and ineffective outcomes. So what we are trying to do here is build a platform. This is the Digit platform. And broadly, when we talk about platform, I'll talk about three pieces. The first piece is, in the platform, we build these shared data registries. Now, what is a registry? A registry is just a repository of verified or tested data, trustworthy data, just like, Aadhaar is a citizen registry of sorts. So we try to build these registries. Now, these registries are shared across departments, maybe across states as well eventually. And when you have a unified view of the data that you look at, then your cost of integration becomes low, trust becomes high. Administrators get full visibility into what is going on, which leads to effective decisions. One example that I would like to quote here, just to kind of link it to a real world problem. This comes from my colleague PR Krishnamurthy, who's in Chennai. And one of the stories that he told me is, in the Chennai metro, the property tax department and the water department constantly keep fighting about how many properties there are in Chennai, because both of them have separate databases. So the property registry has about 10 lakh properties in Chennai. I'm just throwing out a number, I don't know the actual number. Whereas the water department says they've got 15 lakh water connections. And every year they keep fighting about these numbers, saying, no, my data is right, your data is not right. And this keeps going on, right? That's an example. Whereas if you had a single registry, which both these departments could tap into, then you have a unified view of the data, and then you can actually start to see some patterns and actually solve some problems based on that data. So that's what shared data registries give you. So as part of the Digit platform, we try to build these registries which are cross-cutting, which can be used across missions, across ecosystems, right? And this will eventually lead to full visibility of what is going on. And when you have complete data, it leads to good decisions and effective outcomes. The second piece that I want to talk about is in the platform. So we spoke about this. The next one is basically common services. When you've got a unified data layer, then you start to build some of these services on top of that data, which can be used across multiple domains. And these are services typically that every government department ends up building repeatedly. And you don't need to do that, because that drives the cost high and you end up maintaining so many different technology stacks and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately in the platform, you would want to build these common services on top of your data layer so that many people can just reuse it. And again, that just drives a lot of efficiencies, right? So as an example, I just want to pick this up. So you can see that if you have an identity registry, in the case of India, it's Aadhaar, but you can keep it generic. If you have an identity registry and you build these services such as authentication, signing, and eKYC on top of this identity registry, then basically this enables multiple players, both the market as well as government players, to innovate on top of it and integrate it with their own solutions. So, today, that if you try to go get a mobile phone connection, they authenticate you with Aadhaar. And within 15 minutes, you have a mobile phone connection. And I know that 10 years ago, when I moved back to India from the US, it took me 2 weeks to just get eKYC done, and my husband had to run around multiple times, not even 2 weeks, I think more than a month. Whereas now that we've got this, we had Geo that kind of tapped into this Aadhaar authentication. Within 15 minutes, you had a verified mobile phone connection. So that is the power of having a registry, right? This is your registry layer, this is your common services layer, and together this is what we call as digital public infrastructure, or DPI, your equivalent of your roads and bridges and all that kind of stuff in the physical world. And now that we have this, similar, UPI is also fairly similar. Now that you've built this infrastructure, you've got PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm, etc., who are all tapping into the same infrastructure and building their own point solutions. And each of them has a different flavor. They offer their own features, right? And you have the choice of doing what you want. So this is an example of an identity registry in the general domain. Now, if you look at our platform, Digit platform itself, a great example is property registry. I just spoke about it. So if you build a property registry, then you can use it across multiple solutions: property, trade license. If you have a property, then it has a water connection. If you have a property, then it has electricity connection, so on and so forth. So you can end up building solutions based on a common registry and a service layer on top. Again, this is a great example of how common services can be built on shared data registries. So if you see in the government domain, almost all the solutions that you look at will end up building. So there is a concept of a demand. Demand is how a government asks for money that is due to it. So you have a demand service. When you have a demand, you generate a bill for it. And then you notify a citizen saying you have to pay this bill. It can be a citizen or a vendor. And the vendor or the citizen ends up paying that bill. And then you have a collection service which basically says, okay, I have collected money against this bill, right? This is a very, very common sort of a workflow that happens across governments anywhere. And if you can build these shared services, right, and that can be leveraged across by all the different solutions without each of them having to build the same thing over and over again. And this is something that's already available in the Digit platform. And we know that, across domains, we are able to use this very effectively. Okay, so lastly, we spoke about 2 layers of the platform. One was registries and services. And I drew a very, very neat picture for you by just sticking the platform at the bottom like this across national, state, and local. Of course, that's not reality. You may have different governments wanting to install their own instances, people not agreeing about sharing data and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's never that clean. So even in the case where there are multiple platforms involved, there are multiple players involved, you still need a way for all these agencies, all these departments, all these governments to work well with each other. How do you do it, right? You make sure by having a data exchange so that all the things that are happening across these departments or agencies or installations, however you want to look at it, they should be able to exchange data. And we've got a data exchange layer in the platform that we are trying to build, right? It's still a work in progress. So basically, just like HTTP is a standard protocol that allows everybody to build, on the internet. Similarly, SMTP is a protocol which enables everybody to send emails, right? Regardless of what their provider is. I could have a Gmail account, but I can still send an email to a Yahoo account or something else, Microsoft Exchange, etc. So that's what we are trying to do here. So we are trying to standardize the data exchange layer by trying to build some specifications and protocols so that everybody can share information in a standard way, and that will lead to more accountability and transparency. So these are the 3 layers. And just like Viraj mentioned, even though we have the platform with all these layers, and the platform itself is a work in progress, right? We evolve as we learn more. So we have these layers, but just to demonstrate the capability and features of the platform, we also build these things called exemplars or solutions on top. And there are many exemplars that we have built on the platform, primarily in the urban domain, where we have property and water and sewerage and building plan and fire and OC and things like that. We are also into other areas such as sanitation, health, and public finance management. So these exemplars sort of illustrate how you can build something, how you can compose a solution on top of the platform, and it illustrates the capabilities of the platform as well. And information about this is available on our websites. I think some of that will be shared maybe later today. So you can look at what are the solutions we have built. And through Digit Academy, we are also training partners to build solutions on top of Digit using platform thinking. We are training them how to develop on top, how to design on top. And Digit Academy is a very, very important initiative for the organization, where we want to enable the ecosystem to design, build, and sustain our platform. And I just want to leave you with a couple of impact stories. Just think about it. We've got a health platform that we are working on, which will be rolled out in Africa. Just to illustrate the power of platforms and registries. Eventually, this is what this will be ideal, right? If we can get to this scenario where a child is born and maybe the child is registered somewhere, right? You've got a birth registration. The minute the child is registered, maybe a list of vaccinations that are due to the child with timelines can be generated and given to the citizen or the parent, which will help them. So even the poorest of the poor who don't have knowledge about this should be able to avail vaccination for their children, right? So if we can do that and give it to them, maybe there is a better chance that these things will happen. And now let's say you've got, a diagnostic lab, which is collecting data about, some diseases, or it's just conducting tests, right? Now, if this data can be shared in an anonymized fashion, showing that maybe there is a malaria outbreak somewhere in a locality where this lab is collecting samples which are showing a high incidence of malaria. Now, imagine if this data could be shared in an anonymized form to some disease surveillance agency, which is monitoring all these samples, right? And they start to realize that they are seeing more of malaria outbreak somewhere in a locality X. And if they could then issue an early warning saying that there is a epidemic that's breaking out here and we need to curtail it, maybe that gives the administration a chance to initiate some kind of targeted prevention so that you can save lives, right? This is an example from the health use case. Now, all this can be made possible if you've got a unified view into data, and where data is shared across departments, then this is a use case that can happen. The other thing is, this is what we spoke about already, like a property registry, where if you register a property, then you are told, do you want a water connection? Do you want electricity connection? And if you say yes, you are just kind of walked through the whole thing without having the hassle of going to each of these things separately. Again, if you have a unified platform and data registries, this is also possible. So basically, we spoke about the exchange layer. We spoke about the platform layer, which has services and registries. And then we've got solutions. Broadly summary, this is the summary of what I spoke about. We've got solutions. Now, if you want to contribute to any of these layers, right, whether it is you are a front-end expert, maybe you are an analytics expert, maybe you are a product person, or you are a techie who's good at building platforms, we would welcome contributions in any of these 4 layers. Wherever you have interest, all of our code is open source. You can look through that. And my colleagues will also speak about some of the projects that they are working on. And we'll also put out these projects on Discord, and we have a community discussion board. Or you can reach out to one of us directly. And if you're interested in contributing, then that's where you can get started anywhere. Front-end design, product, platform design. You can help us review specifications. You can design specifications and we'll review that along with you and co-create, or you can start to build solutions on top of the platform. So wherever it is, we welcome contributions. Or if you want to try and help us with documentation, I think that's also a great area where we are trying to improve ease of use of the platform itself. So how to deploy Digit. We are also trying to put out tutorials which are there on our website. So if you want to try and install Digit and give us feedback on how easy or difficult it is, that's great. If you want to help us build the exchange protocol layer with specifications, that's a great place to start as well. Or any of the platform services. For instance, Naveen is building this offline maps capability because in Africa, where we have to go and deliver bed nets to rural inaccessible places, they don't have internet. Internet connectivity is poor. They only have 2G. And in that case, the person who's going to go deliver the bed nets has to know exactly where he has to go and how he has to get there before he starts his journey that day. So in that case, we need to have this offline maps capability, which will guide this person to these areas. So that's something Naveen is working on, and he'll talk about it. We are also trying to solve the larger problem of identity. In India, we are lucky to have various forms of identity. We have Aadhaar, etc. But if you look at some of these LMICs, they do not have a national identity. And how do you solve for deduplication? How do you solve for identity? If you take the picture of a person, that's violation of privacy. That cannot be part of the ID. You cannot get biometrics. Then how do you make sure that the same service is not delivered to the same person twice? How do you make sure you only do it once? So these are all big problems. ID is a huge area. Offline is an area. And as far as India goes, of course, we have such a rich diversity of languages. And somebody also mentioned that. So we are trying to also see how we can convert voice to text. basically if somebody speaks a command, how do we convert it to text and how do we navigate? That's also something that Naveen will talk about. There are also core, typical tech problems in platforms, like how do you do, we have a analytics service, we have a transactional database. How do you make sure that both of these are in sync? We don't have ETL pipelines. Everything is done real time, but of course tech sometimes fails. And then in that case, how do you recover from that? How do you make sure data is in sync between your analytics and your transactional databases? How do you archive data? Because we are dealing with a platform for 1 billion. And the amount of data that you generate can be enormous. So how do you deal with data archival? Things like that. These are, of course, not just tech problems. They have a lot of dimensions in terms of privacy and policy and so many other things. And I think that's what makes it so exciting to work in this space. So that's all I had. I'll hand it over to my colleagues. But before I do that, I just wanted to leave you all with a thought for the day. So I've been with eGov for a year now. Before that, I've worked across various organizations. And I think the exciting thing as a technologist is you are building for 1 billion. Scale is something every techie likes, because that's the in thing. So you are building for scale, but you are also solving problems that really matter to us, matter to citizens. And eventually when you solve it, the satisfaction that you get when you know that you have actually solved a real problem for citizens, I think that's something fantastic. You get a adrenaline rush that is unmatched. And I think that's very exciting as a techie to be able to also add meaning to your work and see that work in action. I think that's what really makes it super exciting. And, as Mahatma Gandhi said, if you can imagine the face of the weakest, poorest person and think about whether the step you are contemplating is actually making a difference to him, then you know you are on the right path. And I think that's something all of us here at eGov do on a daily basis. And that's why it's fun and exciting. I hope you'll come join us and help us out on this journey. Thank you so much.
So before we open for any questions, I'll just hand over to Shashwat and Naveen, who will just talk a little bit about some of the projects they're working on. And also, these are projects for which they are looking for the community to participate.
Yeah. So hi, this is Shashwat, and I'm a senior software engineer here at eGov. So yeah. So yeah, first of all, I just want to thank all the attendees who took time out on a Saturday morning to join us here on our open house event. So, and our core engineering team is also here. So in case you want to, just talk to them after.
It's on.
Okay. Yeah. So in case you want to. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So since I am into tech, I don't do presentations and all. So no slides from my side. This is simply going to be interactive from my side. So yeah. So what I would like to talk about is so as to how data flows in Digit and then we get on to the challenges that we face. Yeah. So then we'll get on to the challenges that we typically face. Yeah. So I want you guys to think from the perspective of a microservice. So if I were a microservice, what would I typically do? I would have to handle requests. I'll have to perform business validations that I'm meant to do. I'll perform enrichments. Then on top of that, I'll have to talk to any of the databases which are going to be storing my data, right? So, and then there are these evil performance hungry developers, right? What they want is they want me to do all of these tasks within 200 milliseconds. Now, as a microservice, I am pretty worried. I can't do all of this within 200 microseconds, to be very honest, right? So now if you'll think about it, there are a couple of steps. Let's say any business validations, enrichments, or any business logic that the service has to perform, that is entirely native to that particular microservice, and it can't really be deferred to any other service for that fact, right? So this is how the architects and the devs who were building Digit from scratch, they understood the misery of the microservices, and what they came up with was, let's just take out the data layer entirely. Let's just defer the talking to databases part to some other microservice which is built for it. And that is how two of our core services, namely Persister and Indexer, came into being, right? So both of them are purely configuration based. You don't have to write a single line of code for integrating with them. So when it comes to Persister, that is the microservice which talks to our transactional DB, which is Postgres in our case. And then there's Indexer service. This is the service which talks to our analytical database, which is Elasticsearch in our case. And again, both of them are, just configuration based. Now that they solved this problem of making the modules do less work, modules as well as the developers do less work. Now the next challenge that they faced was, now that there's a module and there's Persister and Indexer, how do you make them talk, right? So here's where I would like to introduce another analogy. So let's say, if you'll see a cluster of microservices, you can think about it as a group of friends, right? So how do two friends communicate? Either you can pick up your phone, give them a call directly and exchange information, or you can send them a message. The channel can be anything. The channel can be SMS, email, or WhatsApp. It can be anything, right? So these are the two ways. Now, when you talk about the first case, where you are simply giving them a call, connecting with them instantly, and then exchanging information, this is what we call as synchronous communication when it comes to technical lingo. So this I'm explaining only for the non-tech people out here who won't comprehend what synchronous and asynchronous communication is. And in the second case, where you are simply, leaving a message for the other person in his or her free time, they are going to be reading that message. They are going to process or understand what has been written, and they are going to return an acknowledgement, right? In some form. That doesn't really matter, right? So this is what we call as asynchronous communication when it comes to technical lingo, right? So now if you'll think about it, if you go with the synchronous approach, you'll have to make a connection to that microservice and wait for its response. That adds to network latency again. So that won't really help, right? This will simply increase the response time, and that is something I don't want as a microservice. I want to be performant, right? So that is why the architects decided to go with asynchronous approach, and the channel in our case that we used was a messaging queue, which is Kafka. So yeah, so now our modules don't really have to worry about, talking to the database and all of that stuff, right? They just have to emit events, and these events will be pushed onto the Kafka queue, and then it will be received by our Persister and Indexer, who will do the heavy lifting of talking to the databases for them, right? So yeah, so in a happy scenario, the module emits an event, Persister and Indexer receive these events, and they'll persist it on the database, right? And we also assume in the happy scenario, both of these databases are always going to be in sync, right? Now, as all technical systems are bound to fail at some point or another, there can be infra issues, or there can be human errors in form of any misconfigurations or anything like that, which can lead to service downtime, right? So that is when these two databases go out of sync. Now, in the worst case, what you will have to do is you'll have to again pull out the entire data from our transactional DB and make sure that, and make sure that everything gets persisted back onto the analytical database, and everything now is in sync, right? So,
got two things and we again had to unblock and do later and then again we are adjusting something.
okay.
Very well.
Somebody's yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah, so where was I? So now this is a huge problem. This is a challenge. This isn't really a problem. This is a challenge to, just keep these two databases in sync. So now what we did was, from our end, we have explored a tool called PG Sync. So that is something that will always make sure that whatever data that you have, in whatever data gets entered into Postgres, that also gets transformed and then persisted onto Elasticsearch, right? So that is something we have explored. But here's the catch. The indexer service that we have, additionally, it also performs enrichment. It has the capability to make external API calls and enrich the incoming data, transform it, and then index it onto Elasticsearch. So that is something PG Sync does not offer. And so we haven't really had the bandwidth to actually, go in depth in terms of how PG Sync has been written. And we don't really have the bandwidth to, extend it and make it do the enrichment part as well, right? So we just want to put this project out for the community. And of course, we are not restricted to PG Sync. We are open to other tools or suggestions so as to how we can go about solving this problem. So yeah, this is one of the projects. And the other one, can you pull that up as well?
The other
Okay.
one. So we will have time to talk to Shashwat after this session as well. And for people on the call, we'll also have a separate call set up with the tech team, so you can discuss any other questions that they have. I'm just handing over to Naveen, who'll need 5 minutes.
Hi everyone. So my name is Naveen. Actually, I'm a lead developer here. So who is working? Is it better now? Yeah. So I'm a lead developer here who is working daily with respect to the front end web applications and even the mobile applications. So yeah. So the point which I'm talking about today is with respect to the offline maps. So basically, before going into that, so let us approach to the problem what we are right now trying to solve. So basically, like in the country of India, like we do get a internet in each and every place, like not now, even in like 2024 or 25. But let us assume there is a countries or like where you won't even get a better internet connectivity at multiple places or even at a villages. So assume there are countries who is yet developing and are underdeveloped countries and they want to be digitalized. So for that purpose, so where there should be have a certain registries and registries where you want to collect the individuals data, so that there'll be one standard set of data where you can refer to. Yeah. For that, basically to collect those data, assume there are certain geolocations where you want to capture that, and those geolocations to capture and to navigate, assume you have captured those locations today and you want to deliver certain resources to them. Assume either it's a COVID vaccination or even any bednet delivery and all. So for that, there are uneducated people also where they are utilizing the phones, and to like to get a better experience of that. So there can be a possibility where you just navigate to the specific location with the offline maps, which ideally like in a perspective of usage, it will be better and it will be like more I mean, the time consuming is also less. So hence we are like solving that with the help of open source platforms. So, and we have utilized some of the like we have used a Flutter framework for that. So where it is a cross browser platform which works on multiple platforms such as Android, iOS, web, or desk. So here we have added one of the project that is a offline map, and which ideally what it does is assume you want, yeah, just give me a minute. So assume there is a like a specific boundary which has been allocated, and you wanted to navigate from one position to another position, where you select the coordinates of that, and then you just click on that, so that it ideally tracks the location, and then you can ideally download them. So downloading in the sense, it is ideally like getting the locations of each and every tiles, and then you can directly get the routing of that specific endpoints, so that it will be like ideally where you will be able to like download each and every tile of that specific locations, and then it renders on the screen in an offline mode, like even if you are not in online also, where you can able to like get those tiles on your phone, and then you can easily navigate between the start and destination endpoints. So yep, so this is what we have done, and we are yet waiting for the inputs with respect to what we have done, and we are also like looking forward to contribute to this project.
Thanks, Naveen. Yeah. Okay, any questions on the tech side of things which Subhashni, Shashwat, or Naveen can answer? I think most of the questions are on chat are now being answered, so we just open to the room. Harshvardhan, if you're around, do you have a question?
So I'm online. So my question is related to the design part. So how design is helping the e-governance? Maybe anyone can answer.
I didn't. Yeah, okay. No product. Any other questions here in the room?
One question I have from the online one. Are we, is eGov participating with ABDM, Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission of creating health, which I think there are three components to it: health claim exchange, unified health interface, and basically identity management for three stakeholders: healthcare providers, seekers, and facilities.
So we are actually deploying our verifiable credentialing component as part of ABDM. That's one addition that we're doing to the ABDM. Apart from that, we're also working on a health campaign management platform, and it's still being built. The V1 is being rolled out in the next month or so. So we hope that that also can be part of the ABDM stack eventually.
Got it.
We'll cover more about HCMP in the next session. We talk about products then.
Anyone in the room? Otherwise, we'll probably take a 5-minute bio break. Water is available. I mean, the drinking water is outside. Gents' washrooms are that side. Ladies is here. But 5 minutes, please come back, because otherwise it'll be difficult to finish what we had planned. And after the session on product, we'll briefly quickly talk about how we expect the volunteers to contribute, how we'll interact with you, and how we plan to engage with you. So we'll just come back at 11:40.
Should we get started? If it's already 12, good afternoon. Okay, my name is Jojo. I head the products function here at eGov, and just wanted to kind of run everyone through the role of products in what we're doing, where it'll be great to collaborate with all of y'all, get inputs, work together, etc. A very quick, can people on the call here? If anyone can just, okay. Okay. A very quick background about myself. I'll keep it to 20 seconds. I've got about 25 years working on products. Started in the first generation of internet companies in India. Was really fascinated by the possibilities that the internet afforded at that point in time. Was really taken up by how we could reimagine things. And then a couple of decades later, I found myself at eGov, again, looking at what can tech and what can digital tech really help change, right? And how it can help us reimagine our world itself, and which is why I'm guessing all of y'all are here also. So thanks for coming in. So I just thought I'll spend a couple of minutes thinking about the biggest challenges, right? We've been talking about the biggest challenges, etc. And when I was putting this together, I said, okay, what are the biggest challenges, and why do we call them the biggest challenges? And like everyone with a laptop, I went to ChatGPT, right? And I said, okay, which are our biggest challenges right now, right? And this is the answer. ChatGPT gave us, and well, it seems to be what we're talking about, right? And then the next question is, why are these challenges, why are they the biggest? So any options over here? Why are these two challenges the biggest challenges? Any thoughts? Perfect. Right. I think you gave the answer. So my presentation is over. So thanks. Right. Yes, it impacts us all. It's also, so the scale is definitely a part of it, but the other part of it is also that they are really complex, right? Which is why they are challenging. And this is a very simple, I think a lot of you all would have seen it. I'm just calling out the difference over here. Won't spend a lot of time on it. When we're talking about problems itself, problems can be simple, problems can be complicated, problems can be complex. The examples over here on the screen give you a sense of what a simple problem is. You have a recipe, you follow the steps, you get the answer, right? A complicated one is, well, it requires a lot of technical expertise. Sending a rocket to the moon, it's a big challenge. It's complicated. It's not that complex, right? Raising a child, on the other hand, is complex, right? And the reason I say this is because the problems that we deal with, right? Societal challenges are complex as well, right? And there is, and for very, very similar reasons, where the cause, and I think I was having a discussion over here with Sharad over here on why are they complex, really, because your cause and effect relationship isn't always known, right? You do something and you don't exactly know how people are going to respond to it, right? So I just thought I'll give you a glimpse of the kind of societal challenges that we're working on. Viraj covered a lot of those in his presentation early on, but just to give you a sense, and then I just thought we'll spend some time on actual projects, which my colleagues, Runal, who's a product manager working on health, and Tahira, who's a product manager working on sanitation, will give you a deeper insight into what we're doing specifically in health, what we're doing specifically in sanitation. But before that, just a glimpse into the nature of problems that we're working on. So how do you improve the quality of life for citizens across India, right? And that's a big, audacious, complex problem. In the way that we do it, say, for example, and this is one of the projects that we're working on, we're empowering the National Urban Digital Mission that looks at spreading the convenience of digitized services across 4,400 cities, impacting 35 crore people, right? How do you make sure that you have drinking water for every remote Indian village, right? And that's another big problem. And these are the sort of problems, when we're inviting the volunteering community, when we're inviting people to join, these are the nature of problems that we'd love your inputs on, right? So for example, right now we're looking at enabling the Jal Jeevan mission, which covers 6 lakh villages, impacts 40 crore people. We're looking at digitally transforming health campaigns. So I'm not going in detail into health campaigns. We'll cover a lot more of these. Health campaigns are rolled out across 100 plus countries, largely where your routine healthcare is not really mature. Over 1 billion people are directly impacted by health campaigns. The other sort of problem that we call societal challenges, big complex problems, are digital enablement to achieve zero untreated waste in our towns and cities. We've given ourselves a target of reaching out to 1,000 habitats in 1,000 days, and that's what the sanitation mission does. The Tara will talk a lot more about this. So this gives you a sense of what these challenges are and how we're looking at, from an organizational point of view, from a digit point of view, how we're looking at using digital technology to address these sorts of problems. And overall, so I've covered about 4 SDGs here. There are many other SDGs. We're looking at catalyzing the achievement of all SDGs in 30 countries by 2030, right? Some of these are being done within eGov. Some of them, like Viraj mentioned, are being done by other NGOs, by other countries, etc. But those are the nature of opportunities that we're working on. So what is the role of products in solving all of these, right? How many product folks over here, just to get a show of hands? 5, 6, nice, right? So this must be, it's familiar, right? It's not anything new. Essentially what we're saying is that you look at identifying what's your problem and what's a problem worth solving. We try and identify who you're really solving it for, and how do you make something that is usable, it's desirable, it's viable, and it's feasible, right? And in an organizational context, your impact would be revenue, would be profit, would be growth, would be sales, etc. And over here we look at societal impact in our context. Sorry, this is okay. And this is the slide Sharad I mentioned. I'll add, right? And the question was, how is product building, or the nature of products that you're working on while solving societal challenges, how different is it from doing it in a private sector setup? From the tools that we use, the methods that we use, it's very similar, right? So you would see everything that you see while working on a startup, while working within an organization and building out amazing products. You would use similar kind of thinking, similar kind of approaches, similar kind of tools. The challenge over here when you're working on challenges like water, when you're working on challenges like health, when you're working on challenges like improving the lives of people living in cities and towns, is that there are many more forces of fragmentation that are pulling the problem in different directions, right? So while you're working on something, you've got to think about your institutional challenges. For example, your state capacity and the capabilities of people. You need to look at social norms. You need to look at the complexity of the domain itself. You've got to look at changes in policy, changes in regulations, changes in your legal setup. You need to look at the complexity of technology when you're working across multiple layers of government, etc. Right? And hence, what ends up happening is that while you have similar tools at your disposal, you are confronted with many more forces of fragmentation, right? And that is the fundamental difference, as I see it, between building products within an enterprise, and some of these will be relevant even there. It's not like you'll see these only when you're working on societal challenges, but they're magnified over here. You need to have a lot more consideration for all these issues when you're building. Does that kind of address that? Okay. So I asked a question, and I've taken this from another session that we had on what does a product manager really do, right? And this was basically what came up was, oh, they do everything except that development was the biggest answer, right? And this was, and hence over here, the invitation is, yes, we'd like you to do everything, and we'll try and break it down into where all we could engage. I think that was a question earlier on as well. But we'd like you to code also, right? We're definitely looking for engineers as well to help us build stuff. So I just thought I'll break it down simply into phases, right? Like on just to kind of structure it. And there are many different approaches that one can use. What we typically follow over here is saying, okay, there is, if you just break it down into, your first phase of saying, understanding the problem, do we need volunteers to contribute there? Can you contribute there 100%, right? Can you help us build out a product vision for something 100%? Can you help us influence and evangelize what's going on? Can you help us write a blog? Can you talk about it? Can you host webinars like this 100%, right? The next phase is looking at more on the design side of things, saying there are lots of product managers who are really keen on doing discovery work. There are product managers who are really keen on doing design work, etc. Right? We can look at that. And then can you also help us actually take it to market? Right? So broadly speaking, when you kind of cluster these things in product work, you understand, you plan, you define and structure, you design, you prototype, you help build a proof of concept, you pilot it, you scale, and then you help sustain it, right? And these are the broad categories of engagement that that one we do internally, and we'd love the community to work with us on these as well. If you want more detail, right, you can also just work on individually any of these, right? Any of these opportunities for the current work that we're doing within eGov itself. There are specific problems that, and Munal and Daira will talk more about these projects, but there are specific problems that we can work on. If you really want to just saying that, hey, you know what, I'm really keen on looking at the problem definition part of it, by all means, raise your hand and we'd love to engage. If you want to go and build out prototypes, raise your hand, we'd love to engage. There's a Discord channel, you can participate over there. But essentially, the purpose of this slide is to really show that there are lots of avenues of engaging. So like I said, you can help in discovery, at the design phase, at the build phase. You can come in at any stage, you can leave at any stage, or ideally, please work with us all through. With that, I think I'm going to stop and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Mrinal, who's working on a really exciting product on health. But Mrinal, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jojo. Good afternoon. It's almost past noon, so I hope attention is still there. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? Okay. So I had a couple of slides. So instead of you listening to me talk about it in my voice, let's just jump into a video, and that would cover the presentation. After the session, if anyone wants to go a step in detail into what are health campaigns, what are the work, we can definitely catch up here. But just to set some context, right? Health campaigns are periodic interventions that health systems across the world use to either react to a disease outbreak or proactively avoid one. There are 13 to 14 disease areas where campaigns are run, and malaria, polio are few of the largest. So only for malaria alone, we have around 250 million cases of malaria worldwide. And just note, these are the ones that are reported. There are many more, out of which 620,000 deaths alone in Africa. And the 4 countries here, Nigeria, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Mozambique, they contribute to 50% of the global burden. And that is why when earlier, Mozambique is one of our first states where we will be piloting the platform. We are spending a lot of money, a lot of philanthropic money on combating health campaigns, malaria, and executing campaigns. And this is in most of Africa and Southeast Asia and South American regions. I'm not going to go into the problems for each of these. Subhashni covered them when we were talking about the problems a platform solves. What I will do is start this video and okay, folks on the call, if you can just let me know if you're able to hear the audio as well, that will be great.
Health campaigns are critical for delivering life-saving interventions across the world, especially in Africa, where routine health systems are still maturing. Health campaigns prevent millions of deaths and reduce trillions of dollars worth of disease burden. It takes months of planning, thousands of people, and billions of dollars to run campaigns. While digital tools are bringing about some efficiency, they are not doing enough. coverage still remains uncertain, and cost effectiveness a major concern. Current solutions don't seem to support the entire campaign cycle. Operations are fragmented from setting up to delivery. Coordinating is hard, stockouts are frequent, and payments get delayed. Different campaigns use different solutions which often don't work together. And efforts like enumeration have to be repeated every year and in each campaign. This leaves the team stitching information across multiple silos, since real-time data is never available. As it stands, decision makers face an impossible choice. Digital tools are either free but not fit for purpose, or they do the job but cost a fortune, taking money away from inventory, wages, and actual delivery. These realities made it very clear that point solutions cannot do the job. Health campaigns needed a holistic digital transformation. This is how Digit HCM came into being. HCM stands for Health Campaign Management, a free, fit-for-purpose open source product built as a digital public infrastructure to help countries transform health campaigns. Right from setting up campaigns to planning inventory and tracking delivery, it has all crucial components to simplify end-to-end operations and make decisions in real time. For national teams, it provides a digital headquarter to quickly set up and configure multiple campaigns, track progress with real-time data, and a centralized help desk to ensure that campaigns run without bottlenecks. Managers and supervisors get a co-pilot to run end-to-end operations. They can quickly track registrations and delivery, manage attendance and stocks, resolve complaints, make payments, and monitor progress, all from a single app. Frontline workers too have a digital partner, a mobile-first app that readily works offline, simplifies routine tasks with built-in data checks, easy navigation, and on-call support. It also ensures they get timely wages with smart payments. You see, when things are designed holistically, the entire system just works. And that's what Digit HCM does. It is not just another solution. It is built to be a strategic digital infra for health campaigns are critical. Data registries provide a single source of truth from day one. All data of campaign staff, health facilities, and households can now be created once, enable high-speed transformations and new possibilities. Modular building blocks allow the same product to be reconfigured for different campaigns and diseases. And these building blocks can be reused to create new solutions in routine health, primary healthcare, and so on. Shared data registries provide a single source of truth from day one. All data of campaign staff, health facilities, and households can now be created once and leveraged across campaigns today and for routine healthcare tomorrow. Open APIs make it interoperable by default. No more worrying about siloed data or fragmentation. Digit HCM can work with any new or old system. As a true digital public infrastructure, it makes digital sovereignty possible, such that all data and digital product assets can reside within the country. And national agencies can decide the roadmap of health digitalization. Yes, that's why HCM is a game changer. It is open source, it is free, it is yours.
Yeah, so that was a brief overview of the product that we're building to basically plan, execute, and monitor health campaigns from a single platform. And this is just a brief representation of the scope of the functional scope that we offer, right from setting up campaigns, creating the tenants, the servers, creating roles, users, etc., to enabling the programs to perform their planning micro planning, macro planning, to actually executing operations, whether they're managing stocks, attendance, payments, etc., to going to service delivery, which is delivering an intervention. It can be a vaccine, a drug, a bed net, a spray. Tomorrow it can be a screening test as well. And finally, monitoring all of this so that proactively they can take decisions based on real data coming to them in near real time. And that's, I won't go a lot into this. A lot of this information is already available on our website. What I would want to spend some time is on where, I would need your help. Okay, so just to tell I worked with the NHS in the UK on a project. I worked in the US healthcare market, and there were problems there as well, but not as evil as these. So as soon as I joined, this was a problem that has not let me sleep peacefully since like 6 months now. Imagine you are in a country that does not have Aadhaar, or forget it, just imagine India like 40 years ago. You don't have Aadhaar, you don't have mobile penetration, you don't have mobile numbers. One household is sharing, so 3 households are sharing one number, and you can't use a mobile number as a unique identity. You can't use Aadhaar or any other national ID, and you cannot deny someone a life-saving intervention just because they do not have an identity card. In this case, you want to cover the entire population. On the other hand, you have the donors, the funders, who want you to make sure that there is no duplication, there is no wastage, there is no fraud. On the other hand, you also want to ensure that because this duplication does not lead to like a false sense of coverage, it should be a unique transaction that is recorded. With all of these constraints, how do you actually ensure that the data that you're collecting while offline is unique and you're able to address all these use cases that I spoke about: duplication, real coverage, fraud, wastage, and in an offline setup. So this is a problem statement that I created for this presentation. And this is not just a problem in Africa, even in parts of India, the rural parts of India, people do not have Aadhaar cards. In that case, when there is no identifier, also you would think, some easy solutions came up. Okay, let's take the first name, last name, date of birth, gender, hash it out, and that's the unique key. Every time you go, it'll end up generating the same sequence. That's not true. When I was on the field in Mozambique, there were 2 registrars who were registering a household, one using digit, one using DHIS2. There was one person who was saying, my name is Mrinal. The spelling for both was different. So it's not just that. The same person went back to the same household, registered with a different spelling. So even that hashing went out of the way. Now you know why I lost my sleep. So there are ways you can do it, but they are costly. So how do you make sure this can be done at scale at a lesser cost? One more constraint. So the project here is, how do we create a deduplication logic in an offline setup that allows the system to identify duplicates and then address them, while keeping in mind this has to work in an offline setup. The infrastructure is not as tech savvy as we would want it to be. If it was online, this problem is already solved. We have a lot of alternatives to do that. We have limited information. We don't have a ID. We don't have mobile numbers. Names might not be there because the digital literacy and actual education levels are quite low. You cannot expect the user to put in the amount of effort to curate like proper data. That's also out of the window. It should be efficient. It should be scalable. While we are doing this, we are also dealing with PII. I saw a question earlier. How are we dealing with personal identifiable information? And since this is health, tomorrow we might also be dealing with PHI, health information. So how do we make sure the information is not exposed? It is secure, it is private. And finally, because the user, so just a fact, right? And this was something that surprised me. When I went there for the first time and we were in a training, the training started with, how do you use a mobile phone? How do you unlock a mobile phone? And when I interacted with one of the participants, I had to teach her how to tap, how to click on the screen. So that is the digital literacy level we are talking about. So the interface, the UX and the UI have to be extremely simple. Now, these are levels we have not seen before. And that is something we need to think about. And finally, like I mentioned, data is not consistent. The same person can lead to like multiple, can generate multiple versions. So how do you combat that as well? So a logic that can reside in a mobile application, work in an offline setup, and help identify unique records is the problem that I have for all of you today. And if there is somebody who can take it up, I'll sleep like a baby tonight. So this is just one of the problems, and depending on the interest from the community here, we have a couple more in the pipeline. The other one being, I'll just navigate from here. Yeah. I won't let them go without they register. So these are on the GitHub. The details are here. Some of them are not fully fleshed out. So for example, now that we are saying that, okay, we need to, digital campaigns can actually prove helpful. Are they really? As opposed to a paper-based or traditional campaign and a digital campaign, are there really time and work efficiencies? Are there cost efficiencies that we can really look at, and how can we quantify that? So sort of a framework, a business model where we identify the cost parameters, what are the cost points, what is the data quality between a paper and a digital. This is already solved, we know, but how do we actually measure that, by what percentage, and how can then we templatize this so that it can be used for other products and tools in this area? And these are just three that I have. If there is somebody who's interested in it, I would like you to come and fill the point, the fourth point, which is right now blank. So designing a framework and then executing that and filling that out, this is the second problem. And there are a few more. And over the time, as and when we have more engagement, you will find them on this page here. So I'll just pause for questions. If not, I'll hand it over to Tyra.
When you're rolling out interventions like this, especially health and stuff like that, you also need to cooperate and coordinate with other NGOs. It's not just government organizations which implement, especially in the implementation space. How is your platform enable that other organizations to participate, collaborate, and also help in implementation?
Okay, so the first point is that it's an open source. There are open APIs that other tools. Now, there are two types of implementation partners, right? One who contribute from a program perspective, they are not tech enabled. The other are tech implementation partners. Now, if there is a tool already in place, we have open APIs, we can build adapters to ensure data exchange between the two platforms. If it is a program, then that is what we're already doing. From a program point, how do we actually create the SOPs? While we are designing the stuff, all the partners come along on the same table. The designs are reviewed with each other and their inputs are incorporated. So even in Africa, the first implementation that we're doing, we're not doing it alone. It's the government, it's eGov, and there are a few other NGOs that are that have a huge say in how we are doing things. So it's a collaborative approach, and we have something called as a product advisory committee that is in the pipeline, which will be operationalized soon, where people can come in, give their opinion, and determine and influence the roadmap of how this goes on. That includes product companies, other tools that are there, implementation partners, state governments, and also policy and program organizations.
So that's on the programmatic end, what he mentioned, right? You can also do it at the product end, and I'll share a slide. Just share the same slide again, the same deck. So I'm going to give you, yeah. Is this just stop sharing and then and refresh it perhaps? You added that right. So there was just up, yeah. Right. So there's so I'm going to give you an example of so there's a product called public grievance redressal, which is essentially when you have a problem of your street lighting is not working, your garbage is not collected, etc., etc. As a citizen, you can raise a grievance, right? And that's built on Digit. Municipal governments have this entire workflow that's built out. You raise a complaint, it goes to them. It gets assigned to the right person. They go and do an investigation, go and resolve the issue, give the feedback, and then you as a citizen get it. On the other hand, you also have an organization called Reap Benefit. So social enterprise over here where they work with a bunch of volunteers and citizen volunteers to go and surface these issues and resolve these issues themselves. Now, they also had an app, a chat bot essentially to go and get people to raise these issues. The challenge that they were facing was that once they're able to get these issues on their chatbot, how do you now surface it to the government, right? And that's the other way in which you can, so because you already have a PGR on Digit in place, which functions almost like your system of record and a workflow system for the government, all they really had to do was using open APIs, just make sure that the request is channelized through the same system. So as far as the government employee is concerned, the municipal employee is concerned, there is no difference between a request being raised from multiple different channels, right? They just receive the same request, it's forwarded in the same workflow, the feedback is given, and it's pushed out on Reap Benefit. So that's the other way in which your social enterprises, private sector enterprises, or other NGOs can also collaborate on. So just to answer that question. Yeah.
Any more questions for Mronal?
We can connect after the.
Okay, perfect. So while Jitu brings up the screen, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Tahira. I'm the product manager for sanitation at eGov. I've been here for about 6 months. Before that, worked with organizations largely on using tech to solve problems in enterprises. So, yeah. We'll just move to the next slide. So before I think I'll deep dive into the product, we'll just quickly show you a 1-minute video on why we've chosen sanitation as a mission to pursue. Okay, so the video gave you a little bit of context on why this problem is important and its impact on health, on lives of people around you, right? And not only does it have the obvious impact on, say, groundwater quality or health, one of the things that it also leads to is a lower participation in the workforce, girls dropping out of school, and all of this cumulates to an economic impact and a GDP impact as well for India. For India, what you can see is the number alone is at about 50 billion, which accounts to about 6 to 7% of our current GDP. Now, if you think about sanitation in India, and most of us think about it in the form of, say, something like solid waste, which we have to discard from the house on a daily basis, and but a very little focus goes on, say, something like management of fecal sludge or wastewater management. We kind of take it for granted that there are sewers that are connecting our homes and this waste is being transported and treated. Effectively, the state of things is in India is slightly different. About 70% of the homes and institutions that we work in are not really connected to sewer networks, and most of this waste is either being stored well or not being stored well, maybe transported well or not be transported well, and we're not really aware of how well it is treated. One of the numbers here shows you how much untreated waste is going into water bodies. About 45 billion liters goes in every day. And this effectively comes back into a cycle, and then we're consuming that water in a certain format. Given this in mind, about 3 years ago, as an organization, we took on a mission to build a digital platform to enable Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar partners to ensure zero deaths or disease or environmental contamination resulting from poor sanitation. And we set on a mission to achieve this, to achieve zero untreated waste for 1,000 habitats in 1,000 days. I think we're about 600 days into that mission, and I'll cover a little bit about the work that we're doing on ground. But just to dive a little deeper, I know we're a little short on time, but just to dive a little deeper and give you a view of what FSM in particular, and that is the area that we're focusing on right now, looks like. This is effectively what we refer to as the what is commonly referred to as the value chain. About 70% of India is on an off-grid network, which is not connected to sewers, which means waste is being stored in something called septic tanks that are installed individually in households or for a community in total. That waste at particular intervals have to be picked up, transported, and treated, and then it goes into your reuse or disposal cycle. There are, screen is not loading. Okay. Yeah. So now, like Viraj mentioned earlier, lack of visibility across this entire chain leads to a lot of leakages that happen throughout. So a lot of people don't get septic tank cleaned. If they do get septic tanks cleaned, transporters are not necessarily pushing all the waste to your treatment plants. Even if waste is reaching treatment plants, we're not sure how well it is being treated. And while the government is working on defining standards for each of these in terms of containment, in terms of how transportation should happen, how treatment should happen, there is no way for us to monitor or operationalize those standards. And because of some of these challenges, we know that about 93% of the waste that is generated is not being treated properly or not going into your reuse or disposal cycle. What we've done as a platform is connected this entire value chain so that right from the point of collection of waste to the point of it being treated, there is visibility that is being generated, and there's custody of waste throughout that cycle. And obviously everybody who's involved in the cycle has access to real-time verifiable data in terms of assets that are available to perform the service, or how operations are going on. So that's a little bit on the product. The product is currently live in Orissa, which was our exemplar, like Viraj mentioned. Just to test the platform on the ground, we go on and do an exemplar where we handle both product rollout and a lot of programmatic aspects of it. We started that in about December 2021, where we did a pilot with 3 ULBs. We're currently live in 35 ULBs. ULBs, for those in the group, the term stands for an urban local body, largely urban areas that the state is divided into. And in the current rollout, we've also covered a lot of gram panchayats and villages. Rural India has obviously less access to services, and the Orissa has been a pioneer in that model, where they're leveraging urban assets that are available for transportation and treatment for rural areas as well. And the adoption of the platform has been great in Orissa. About 95% of the requests that are coming in to the urban local bodies for desludging are being treated, are being recorded and mapped on the platform. We've obviously had a lot of learnings in terms of rollout of the digital platform, in terms of capacity of people on ground, both in terms of familiarity with digital tools, and the availability of laptops, desktops, so on and so forth. There's ecosystem I think early on we started involving ecosystem partners in terms of both capacity building and in terms of driving initiatives. And we'd be happy. Avik is here. Avik anchors the sanitation mission. Avik, do you want to raise your hand? We'd be happy to chat about that after. But I just wanted to quickly touch upon some of the projects that we have for you. What you and I'll pick up probably point 3 first, because we started with Orissa. So while we know that 95% of the requests that are coming to ULBs are being recorded on the platform, one of the things that is slightly ambiguous is what is the count of waste that is being generated and that should be effectively treated. Because if you're just monitoring from the point of collection to treatment, you don't know what's happening from containment to collection. So we want volunteers to help us with that analysis, and also look at some of the data that we have on the platform, and arrive at how do you improve A, quality of service that is being provided, and B, how do you improve the economics for different stakeholders that are participating in the value chain, be it vendors that are participating in transportation, be it vendors that are participating in managing treatment plants, so on and so forth. So that's one of our projects, and we'd love some help on that. Second is we're obviously looking continuously to enhance the platform for sanitation. And while the current platform largely covers requests that come in from citizens and them being serviced for waste pickup, there is also a need for scheduling in a large number of cases, be it when it comes to community and public toilets in case of fecal sludge management, be it in terms of daily pickups for dry, wet, plastic waste, when it comes to solid waste management, be it pickup of waste material generated at hospitals for medical waste management. So that part of it needs to be built out, and we've done a little bit of requirement gathering on that, but we'd love to get volunteers involved in terms of speccing it out, building it out, and rolling it out on the ground. And while we're doing the exemplar in Orissa, and we have conversations ongoing in terms of rollout in India, we're also looking at how we can solve this problem across different geographies. And we'd like volunteers to participate in research on that front to understand how FSS fecal sludge systems or management happens, what is the capacity available specifically for Africa currently. But if any of you all are interested in exploring other geographies, we'd be more than happy to collaborate on that front. I think that's about it from me, just opening it up for any questions that you all might have. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Citizens usually pay for services for cleaning of septic tanks. Yeah. Yeah. So her question is, where does the revenue in terms of FSM services come from? Like, what are the different sources? And so largely, one is when the citizen is making requests for clearing of their septic tanks, or institutions are making that request, they are paying a certain amount for that service, which becomes one source of revenue. There's also a secondary market that is now starting to develop for treated waste as compost in factories, as some ULBs we've seen are selling it out to directly to consumers in the open market. But that is still a market that is growing. It's not very established yet. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, how much of the political environment of a place, say which party is at the helm, affect, or is it insulated? Like say certain things are drawn on a contract basis that it will be done for so many years, or it will be taken to conclusion. Nothing stops midway, or changes happen. Any such experiences?
So the question was, how much does the political dispensation impact what we do? So there are two things. One is from a principal perspective, we're ideology agnostic. It doesn't matter which political party is there. Okay. So in terms, but still political environment does have an impact. So we always use a term called political currency. Is it politically viable thing to do? Right? Bureaucratic intent and the administrative capacity. All three need to line up. Okay. So Jal Jeevan Mission is a great example of, it is a great initiative, right? From a point of view of giving tap water to the rural India, right? And so that has a political currency behind it. Okay. But what we have seen typically is governments have come and gone, like Andhra Pradesh working for 7 years. If you have every government wants to service the citizens. I mean, what we're doing is nothing controversial in that sense, right? But we have, from a point of view of our engagement, primarily engage with the bureaucrats, okay, and they will kind of align the political leaders in their states. So when governments come and go, it doesn't really impact us that much in that sense, our work at least. But as a principle, we want to keep ourselves agnostic. Doesn't matter, what the political equation is.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, as usual, we are on chat.
So with regards to sanitation project, I wanted to understand how does the implementation model looks like? Like what made you successful in Odisha, and how do you see the roadmap to scale?
Yeah, we Tyra can connect. Yeah. I'll just do one last check if there's anything on chat. No. Okay, great. So, no, you asked the question last time, no? Mohit, do you still have any question? I thought he had asked.
No, I'm done. Sorry, I think I forgot to lower.
Forgot to lower hand because it's a virtual hand. Cool. So now actually we have Ish, who's been working with KK from our office on a very exciting project called Unified Service Delivery. And he's here to pitch this project to all of you and get some more volunteer hands on board.
Thank you so much. Yes. You can just put the slide up. So I think the identity crisis of the day, folks are asking, are you a product guy? Are you a tech guy? I hadn't heard this question before and honestly struggling with it, but I'm glad I'm talking about something that is neither a product nor a tech. It's meant to be the connect in between, right? It's an interface. It's supposed to make things possible. So unified service interface is what we are working on. It's really a community project. So it's not really an eGov project per se. So there's me, I joined in sometime early February. I was looking to, look to see if I could contribute in some ways towards sustainability. I've been trying to explore various dimensions on personal spaces and so on. And I came across eGov and I saw my alma mater had got some connects. And then, we connected up and then we've been working a few months now off and on. There's various of us participating and as you'll see, there's a lot of room to do more. So this is, as Soumya said, a call for participation more than anything else, right? So, in some ways, if you look at services today, I don't really want to badmouth a lot of stuff, but just trying to capture the state of the union in terms of Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar. Samaj has a lot of issues. You have to get a service. It can be quite a challenge. Some years ago, you had to stand in various queues. You probably still have to. You get some availability in a digital way, but there are issues. Sarkar also, as Viraj was pointing out, has a lot of problems. You don't have uniform data. You don't know how to take the decisions. It's everything is quite fragmented. Each piece has to do, and bazaar is largely absent from this equation, right? And so the question is, and if you look at it in some ways, I think we moved from the physical services to digital availability of services, but that extension happened much in the same way. When the services were physical, you had to go to the office, queue up, meet the people, and so on. When these services were digitized, they have been digitized in quite the same way, right? So people made the same extensions. You still had the same digital rooms. Each service provider, sorry, there's a little different view that was there on the screen here and here, sorry. So the trouble is that each service provider creates a unique digital room as well, either an app or a website or both or whatever else, and they have to deal with each aspects of this service themselves, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. And what you could do is, if you could have a standard, much like what UPI has been able to do for payments, right? The banks are banks and people are people, but because you have a standard interface, everybody has a much smoother experience. And I'm sure, the billion in India can raise their hands to it, and the world is kind of looking as well. So if you could have an interface that could smoothen these aspects out much in the same way, what you could do is you could have the service providers, you could have the citizens, you can have a standard, and then the bazaar can also start to come in, right? The Paytms and the Phone Pays and the MyGates and so on can become channels of providing services, right? And that's really the vision that USI has, right, on making this possible. And given how this is sort of going, I think there is also an opportunity to be able to do it in a privacy first way with, taking into account the user consent, right? And so today, I think one of the challenge we have, I have to do this on a daily basis, wherein you fill out so much of your personal information, put Xeroxes of all your key documents that can really get you into so much of trouble, and you just put them out there for everybody to consume and use, right? So can there be better consent? Can I say I'm giving only this information and only that information needed for that service, and I'm giving it for my consent for this period of time and so on, right? So can you start to get that dimension in is something that needs to be thought of. I think there's a lot of activity in this area. Overall, there's the DEPA standard, there's financial aggregation happening towards consent, there's DigiLocker and so on that's able to do some level of data vault, but there's a lot of possibilities on top of it that might be feasible to unlock, right? So can you have these elements starting to come in? And then other common aspects that come, dealing with payments, being able to the big area that Sarkar would need is having enough analytics, being able to know is everything, how is, once you have a unified framework of being able to channel the services, it should be possible to be able to have common understanding of what's working and what's not working and getting the statistics and so on, right? So there could be a lot of possibilities, around there. We are currently envisioning to be able to build such a thing over frameworks that have already started to work. So like, there's Beacon and so on that's happening, that is forming the backbone on things like ONDC. And we're strongly exploring looking at those kind of technologies that are already starting to provide this kind of scale as a way to be able to achieve this proposition. And we just think of the citizen and the service provider, but you have to see, and I think this has become quite evident through a lot of the conversations, right? Like, just the sanitation stuff. It's not just somebody providing sanitation, there's the sanitation truck, there's, there's other second level of utility and everything else that can be coming about. How can those integrate onto that same network as well, right? So if you could have a network that can be scalable in that fashion, where citizens, service agencies responsible for services and contract agencies that can provide the things, and other beneficiaries can start to participate in a scalable way, you can suddenly get to a very powerful place, right? And this is happening in other areas. It's happening with ONDC on commerce and things like that. So this can be really powerful in that way. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties on how we are exploring the bits there, but that's possible. And I think to the aspect of inclusiveness, we have to be careful that that grand vision I showed, where you have this consent manager and everything else on your smartphone, works for a lot of people, but you have to be careful about recognizing that not everybody is in that state, right? Not everybody is English literate, not everybody has a smartphone, not everyone is digitally literate, and so on. So it has to be possible to have a system that can scale to working on other channels, right? Can people go to a Bangalore one or some other Seva Kendra? Can, you would also have issues like you suddenly have new digital issues coming, right? The standard problem I see, in my parents' place itself, the name that is on the registry versus the electricity bill and the water thing is all completely different. And this is going to be a problem, because it's going to say these three are three different people, bring these people who are not even born in some sense, right? So there has to be a way to navigate these. And so it has to be possible to be able to have other channels to be able to say, okay, here is my certificates, here is an approval. The names don't match, but it's possible to go ahead, right? Somebody can go offline maybe and make these things and so on. So it has to be possible to not just work in this really smart, smooth way. Maybe it can work really smooth in those fashions, but it has to be possible to do it in other ways as well, right? So that's another key piece, and that's really the proposition in some ways. We are, we have this initial sketch, what I shared. I don't think we have too much more than that. We have a little more than that. We have done some engagement with people at Beacon, trying to learn things. We have all been trying to relearn some of the aspects as well. We may not have grown understanding how distributed systems really work, but so we have some initial sketch, but we need to be really developing a specification. We are thinking of an exemplar that needs to be demonstrated. We need to find ways of engaging with the ecosystem, making it all real. So there's a lot of possibilities here. And that's where the call for volunteers come in. So let us know. We have a Discord channel you could be using. You could be reaching out any of the people who you have already connected with on eGov. And we are here as well. So let us know and we can be doing. So that's what I had. Any questions or anything that I can help and field or whatever. So in terms of people already engaging, right now, KK, myself, there's Sudhir, another fellow alumni from my college. We have people from Samagra and a few others who have been kind of engaging from time to time to build up this idea to this point. But yes.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what USI, that one block that you showed. For a lack of a better way to articulate it, is it some kind of a subcontracting of the services that the government or the local body will be able to provide, intercept that through a subcontractor? Is it something like that?
See, the vision is actually an interface. It's an interface. Government typically delivers, as Viraj explained, 1,500, 1,200 to 1,500 services through 60 different departments. So everything is fragmented. So government, when there are many attempts by various governments to say, okay, why do I bother the citizen with dealing with so many departments? That is one pain point that many people are thinking about it, and they're addressing it in various ways. Okay, and so this interface is supposed to expose both the seeker side, service seeker side, and the service provider side. and make sure that these are communicating very well. These are basically a protocol that we will define, and we'll enable it in such a way with those additional features like consent, etc., those kind of additional paraphernalia, which will make all these work together. So citizen doesn't bother to who is providing. He doesn't need to know that. He doesn't need to chase up on that and stuff like that. Those are the kind of things that we are attempting to solve with the USI. Yeah, we have a small setup there. We'll be glad to talk to you about it and provide a clarification.
I have a
Anything?
question. So is it like Paytm, seeker apps, sorry, the user apps such as Paytm, Amazon, building interfaces on top of the interface, or building on top of the interface that you have designed, so that the consumer would be able to make the pay the property taxes, make the electricity bill payments, make the metro card recharges, and so on and so forth, without having to create account in different apps such as maybe IRCTC, even if it wants to book a ticket.
Yes. So today, if you see, each of these services may be providing a separate website, a separate app, and so on. Instead, each service provider provides a standard interface so that any other and a front end like the ones that you described can integrate this into their application and provide it out, right? So it could be a website, it could be a Paytm, it could be an Amazon, and so on, who can integrate on top of this service and be able to provide that. So once you have a standard interface, the providers, the channel can be different from the service provider itself. You don't have to be going to the service provider directly. The service provider could be accessed through the channel.
Got it. It's like an open network of open networks.
Yes, exactly. It's the HTTP of services, as somebody said, or many different analogies that you could be using.
Is it something like Umang, which is already there?
So, I mean, as has been pointed out many times, I think even in our conversation, Umang is clearly one attempt to bring a lot of services together. It is a single platform that tries to bring a lot of services together, but it's not an open system, right? So just because you have Umang, you can't integrate into a Paytm or an Amazon or wherever else in some sense. So this is it makes more Umangs to be possible in some. So for those of you who may not be familiar, Umang is an application and a web-based platform that government has, where you can in one place access a lot of the services and so on. And so besides making that more open, essentially bringing in the bazaar element, Umang is essentially not really a bazaar. What we would hope to be able to do is, even on Umang, you need to make a lot of input a lot of the times and so on. So it's more, Umang is more an aggregator of a lot of the services, right? If you make an input for one service, you are not necessarily able to utilize it in another place and so on. So what we are hoping is, through the data vaults and consent management and so on, some more of those dimensions can also come in. So primarily we are looking at two things more than what Umang is able to do today. Umang is a great thing, but what we are hoping to do is to be able to allow anyone to implement an Umang. And we are hoping that there is good value in that, as is already being seen in some ways. And the other thing that we are hoping is that the experience can become even more smoother and so on. Some of the other aspects are also in terms of allowing for common analytics and so on to be available more broadly and so on, would be other possible things. I don't know, KK, if you want to add some more to that.
I think the main thing on this is, as a citizen, you only, what is called the two principle, the once only principle, that you only need to tell me my details only once. Okay, what is my date of birth? What is my photo ID, what is my address, what is my father's name. Don't know, fill up in 54 services that you need from the government, right? So from an endpoint, right, from a citizen point of view, that is what we're looking for. That when you have interconnect, that's a registry. Then what example Subhashini was giving earlier, your details are a registry there. Whichever service needs to use through USI, they can call the registry and say, okay, I know who you are. Are you this person? Yes, go ahead. Don't upload every time the same thing again and again and again. So I think that's a very important construct. It's not about, yeah, of course, the market will get created, right? But essentially you create it so that for citizen, it's completely seamless. They're not going pillar to post. Now you go to this thing, get this attested. Now go there, submit this. Now get a photo. Now get a photo stat of your this thing. All those kind of things. So that's extremely important. Keep in mind from a endpoint perspective.
I think it's a great initiative. It's a very good thing. And the way Viraj also explained, I think it makes a lot of sense. How I understand this is when Subhashini was also showing what they have built and the architecture that they have already captured all the citizens' informations into their registries. So how I am looking at it is the current registries does not have any consent. So I do not know if I am giving my information to one of the systems, the other system can leverage it. I'm not really sure how they can leverage it because in between that, they have not taken my consent. So how I am looking at it is kind of a microservice, which can be leveraged on the existing registries that are already built. Is this the right thinking? Or?
Yeah, I think that's why what we tend to show. So there are different places these registries can exist, right? A lot of these registries today exist on the service provider side, and then you don't have control and so on. The way we are envisioning this registry is, I mean, the registry is probably still not with any one person, but the registry is on the citizen side. The citizen has their digital wallet of all the information that they have, right? And so you get a consent request. So while you are availing a service, say you want to apply for a passport, it needs your address and pretty much everything in some sense. And you get a request saying this all is requested. Do you approve? And you approve it, and that information is made available, right? So it's disaggregation of this aspect. You could look at a registry at the service provider end, but it might be even more powerful if the service registry could be sitting effectively on the citizen end, right? So like a DigiLocker in some ways and so on, where you actually provide that consent and do the things, but maybe with some more stuff. At least that's the vision of it. We'll have to see how that kind of goes.
A very quick question here. Since you mentioned about data vault, so there is, since I work on the health side of it, NDHM, National Health Authority, has already built highways and such as Arogya Setu app, right? On the health side of it, they have built. They are powering Abha addresses of it to give unique identifiers to the citizens of India, the patients. The facilities, HPR, HFR, health facility registries and health patient registries, health. So, I mean, are we looking to leverage those in the building of this rather than, spending the same time in reinventing the wheel, which has already been done?
Okay, we'll just take 1 minute. Yeah.
So I think we lost out a lot of the piece, but yes, there is a lot of work happening around consent and registries like the ones that you mentioned in as part of Ayushman Bharat and so on. We would want to find a way in which all of these can connect, but yeah, that would be the key thing rather than duplicating the stuff out. But some of that needs to be figured and understood. Thanks.
Okay, so we do have a dedicated space which says Unified Service Interface over there. For the ones who are here, you can please go to that zone and interact once we close here. For the ones on chat, we will also organize another discussion session at maybe in the next 1 week, 10 days. So you could join that as well. I'll just quickly now go into the details of how you can keep in touch and how you can participate in these projects, because Ultimately, that's what we are looking for. And I think that's what you would also be interested in. So first thing is, if you haven't already joined the Discord channel, please do so by scanning this QR. Uh, we are very insistent on this because then we can just communicate there, and it won't be a one-way communication from eGov, but also all the community members can start talking to each other. So I'll just give like 30 seconds for people who haven't joined the Discord yet to please join it. People in the room, we've also placed a few QR codes somewhere near the entrance, so you could use that as well later. So I think the idea is that we are encouraging all volunteers to join and start with Discord. There is an onboarding kit that's available. Not sure if my screen is showing up. Okay. Yeah. So this is what Discord looks like. There is an onboarding kit available, which will give you all the details of what are the live projects that we discussed today. And we will keep adding to that list. There's also, the digit code base is available. There are product demos, technical documentation, everything's linked here. So you could actually, come in here and look at all the resources that are available. Just being on Discord, obviously there is no time commitment that is required. If you find something interesting among the discussions, or you want to start some interesting conversations, then you could start those in one of the channels that is available here. And this is like pretty easy to follow, right? We just have a bunch of channels which you can join when you accept the invite. You could join them later as well, for example. And then some of the projects that we have defined well will already have some channels which you can join. So for example, Tahira mentioned a data analytics project that she had. And so there is a channel for that. Whoever is on this channel will then get the details about the cadences, about what are the milestones that that group is working towards. And for now, the eGov SPOC, which is Tahira in this case, will be driving these, at least setting up these cadences. But the expectation then is that the group, decides that, okay, by the end of this week, this is what we want to achieve. This is the milestone we want to get at. Decide the time commitment that they are all comfortable with. And that's how they get their project going. So this is completely, volunteer owned. Tahira is there to help out with the initial discussions and getting us started. Similarly, all of the other projects as well. I think one of the interesting ones which we didn't mention was Digit Sandbox, which is actually something that we really need so that people like you can easily interact and try Digit out. So the other thing is, if you guys start some discussions on Discord or on Git, which I'll just go to in a bit, and those discussions gather momentum, you want to start a separate channel where again that interested group of people wants to start setting up meetings and get their project started, then you can just get in touch with the community manager on the ask for help, and we'll set up a separate channel for you. Right. For now, you're free to join any of the channels that you're interested in. And we'll also share a Google form specifically for the people in this room. For the ones online, I'm going to share the Google form right after this. But for the others, we'll share a form so that you can tell us which are the projects you're interested in, and we definitely don't miss looping you into those. Just quickly also showing the discussion board that we have, right? Yeah. Again, this is okay. Again, this is also organized similarly. So there are a few domains. There are a few, general tech. There are bugs and so on, which are already populated here. You can just get started, get your hands dirty and start interacting with us. We will keep an eye on this. And in case you create a new discussion here, or if you have started working on something and you're stuck, you can just share that link on Discord and then people will, respond. So I'm just showing an example. So we've defined what it is that we are looking for the sandbox, what we think are the features as of now. We are still trying to build the capabilities for this particular thing. And we've also kind of mentioned what are the skills and interests that really will help move this project forward. So similarly, we'll be documenting most of the things that we mentioned today, and we'll be sharing details of those over Discord and get the conversation started. So yeah, that's about it in terms of the logistics of how we make this happen. I will also just share this link on the chat. So let me. Also, any questions in the meantime, please feel free to ask. So I'm just sharing the Google form. Again, all that the Google form has is basically a list of some of the projects that we mentioned today. If you are interested in these definitely and want to be looped in, we just fill the form and we'll get back. Otherwise, again, you are on Discord, just post on the group that this is the channel, this is the discussion I'm interested in, and you can get started. But yeah, we do hope that most of you will fill this in and kind of commit to volunteering with us by the end of this session. And also, there is like a chart paper there which says suggestions, use cases, ideas. If there are already any new ideas you think you can explore with Digit, please feel free to add some stickies over there. For the rest, for the folks who are still in the room, there are 2 laptops here with interactive demos already set up. You can just try some of our apps. The easiest ones to try out, the quicker ones are public grievance and trade license and things like that. So you can just try those. And yeah, and there are some stickers, etc. also placed here. Yeah, I think. Yeah, actually, why not? So basically, USI is KK and Ish, and they will be in this part of the room. Jojo is anything product. So you can just catch him, just raise your hand. Then there's Tahira and Avik who talked about sanitation. Again, they'll be somewhere in that zone. Our whole tech team, which sits quietly and all the time is in that zone. So you can you can talk to all of them over there. Runal, health, anything interesting that you want to discuss on health, he's around. Somewhere there, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so someone has asked, are there any regular open discussion sessions being conducted? Yes, we will plan to do those. Just give us some time. We're still setting all of this up. Yeah. So the projects which are already well defined, those we will start cadences for those. And people who are on, and we'll put up the meeting link and agenda and stuff on the Discord so people can join. And again, if you join a few sessions, you all can also start deciding when that particular group wants to have their sessions and manage their time. So oops. Also, where can I see ongoing and or upcoming projects? So again, in the Google form right now, we have only mentioned the ones we talked about today. We'll keep updating from our end, whatever projects come up. We'll put those on the Discord, and if any of you have ideas, you can also keep sharing them there. Yes, regular connects, we will ensure that there are regular connects as long as we see the same enthusiasm in the future as well. So I think that's it. If people online can stay back for like 5 minutes, we are going to just try and take a photograph with you all in the background with your name. So if possible, you can switch on your videos, and people in the physical room will just set up here and take a quick 5 minutes. We should be done with the photo, and that's when we will close this.